2024, and now I am pursuing an Olympic campaign in the 49er FX. And so Lily Myers is what I'm sailing with. She's there in a white shirt. And yeah, we're just traveling the world and just trying to get the best that we can be and ahead of the Olympics in 2028 that we are trying to qualify for.
Hi, my name's Ben Rosenberg. I grew up sailing in Rhode Island. Went through Opties and 420s and 29ers and Macras and all different types of boats. And my favorite part about sailing is sailing really fast boats at a high level. So I recently did the Youth America's Cup. I was a reserve sailor and data analyst for the team, which was awesome because I studied engineering in college and I really got to bring in my degree to a sport that I love. And currently I started my own data analytics company for coaching for sailing, and that's again using my degree. I think the biggest thing I wanted to speak about here is there's so many different pathways in sailing. There's pro sailing, might be sailing, there's coaching, there's sailmaking, there's just so many different stuff. And for me, being an engineer, it's been really cool to bring a lot of that stuff that I learned in college and bring that towards data analytics, bring it to different coaching tools, making apps for coaching and all sorts of stuff. So I think if anybody is looking at long term, and I think it's a good thing to think about is there's a lot of different stuff you can do with sailing, and there's so much technology happening now with AI and everything. There's just so many ways you can do it, and every aspect of the sport is changing year over year. And as you get in towards the top of the sport, like the America's Cup, it's just engineers on the team, and the sailors are basically doing what the engineers, want the boat to do. It's not, it's a different side of the sport. And, I enjoy that because I'm an engineer. Some people might not enjoy it as much, but there's so many different ways to, build sailing as a career, build it as a lifelong sport. And, I've really found what I love about it, which is bringing technology in and, sailing high performance boats. And just trying to show that there's so many different ways that you can go. And if you guys have questions, come find me. But I'm super excited to talk about all of it. And that's where the sport is going. And bringing it down to club sailing and stuff like that. Starting to use GPSs, starting to use some sort of drone photography, stuff like that. It'll keep trickling down. And so then when you see the America's Cup or something, hopefully it's not such a big jump as well. And in another thing, which is always what's cool to me, is always bringing in, school projects. Every high school or college project I did for engineering or other stuff, I always brought it around sailing to boost my own sailing, and still a lot of the findings I use, I use, a lot of stuff I use all the time, So I think there's so many different ways to pull in, what you're learning in school and bringing it to sailing and math class, physics, all sorts of stuff. So I think keep trying, different boats, keep pushing yourself, and yeah, have fun, obviously, while you're doing it. So
I learned how to sail big boats with Ben's dad. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin Callahan. I'm currently a senior at Harvard on the sailing team there, but I do lots of other sailing. Over the last year alone, I've done a lot of match racing. I've done a lot of team racing with the people to my right and my left over the course of my whole life. Done a lot of match racing, fleet racing, team racing. I've been fortunate enough to work with the US Sail GP team a bit as well, and do some training with them. And I kind of like what Ben was saying, there's so many facets of our sport to kind of go down. I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of different types of it. So if you want to get into match racing, if you want to get into higher level team racing at the Hinman or at the Wilson or anything like that, or even keelboat team racing and match racing, happy to answer all those questions. But yeah, I've done a lot of different stuff in our sport so far. So really, if you have any questions at all, I'm super happy to help. Currently, I'm doing a campaign for the Olympics as well in the 470. I'm sorry I can't be out with you guys today and the next few days, but I'm also racing as well in the 470 North Americans. So I'm navigating, doing an Olympic campaign and balancing school at the same time. It's definitely hard, but it's manageable. So if you're looking to approach that as well, feel free to come up and ask questions. I'll be here for a lot of the night, and looking forward to speaking with you guys.
Hi all,
event in 2022. I'm talking a little bit about offshore sailing. So I think like everybody here on this panel, I sailed pretty much every type of dinghy you could think about in youth sailing, from Club 420s to 470s to opties. And well, you know, it was all super enjoyable. I got really hooked on offshore sailing. Did my first offshore race when I was 12. And then post-college, that's almost exclusively what I do with my time. Obviously with the real job, it's a bit tricky to get out on the water as much as I want, and offshore sailing is a really great way to be able to, you know, take 3 or 4 days and do 3 or 4 days of really challenging hard sailing, and then walk away from it feeling like, you know, you just did an Olympic campaign, but it was only 4 days, and so then you can go back to work. So, you know, that's, I think, one of the most unique parts about offshore sailing. And then I think the other 2 things that I really like about offshore sailing is you have to be sort of really well-rounded as a sailor. You know, when you're doing dinghies, like if you're a crew, you have a certain skill set, or if you're a skipper, you have a certain skill set. When you're offshore sailing, a lot of unique people. There's a ton of different offshore sailors from around the world, and I've been very fortunate to do a bunch of sailing in Australia this year, but also in different places. And so, you know, meeting a bunch of different kind of, you know, unique individuals that, you know, maybe you don't meet here at the yacht club, that they're from Australia, or they're from Europe, or they're from Asia, and getting to hear about their sailing experience is super cool as well. So happy to answer any questions you have on offshore sailing, how to get into it, who to talk to, more than happy to chat.
And I'm Justin Callahan's twin brother. I'm also a senior at Harvard, and I've also been fortunate enough to be on a lot of team race teams and fleet race teams over the years, winning a lot of national championships with people to my left and to my right as well. So super fortunate about that. And I'm not doing all the cool stuff like trying to go to the Olympics after graduation like these guys. I'll be moving to New York for work, but that does not mean my sailing career is over. I really thought a lot about what my main point is that I wanted to share when I was up here, and I think it's to say yes to every sailing opportunity possible. I think looking back, I'm 22 years old now, about to graduate college. I'm really, really grateful that I've had a twin brother kind of by my side pushing me throughout my sailing career to sail snipes, to do match racing, to do team racing, Club 420s, I-420s, lasers even. And I didn't even like sailing at first. I was 10 years old, and like I was the kid playing Minecraft on the iPad while my brother was out going offie sailing in red, white, and blue. And I ended up kind of liking it through him, and then he's kind of just dragged me along through the process. And I regret saying no to a lot of opportunities, so I just want to share. I think you go out and I think your goal should be to establish as many fruitful relationships as possible, sail as many boats as possible, because I just think being where I am now, looking back, I'm so fortunate for all its success and the people I could share it with, but I think I would love to do even more of that, and I want to pass that all on to you. So appreciate you guys taking the time.
So Mitchell, what we're saying is buy the ticket, take the ride?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There we go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lachlain McGranahan, Declan's little brother. Not twins, but very similar story to what Mitchell explained. I graduated Harvard in 2024, and for the last 2 years have been at Stanford getting a master's degree while also coaching the college sailing team there. And yeah, growing up, ton of different boat experience. Similar to Declan, have done a lot of offshore sailing when I was younger. Not to the extent that I'm flying to Australia every weekend, but it's certainly been a great experience to not only be able to explore all the different classes and have some level of success, but I think the one thing that I wanted to touch on was just the fact that like I have known the people sitting next to me since I was like 7 or 8. We've spent like probably from middle of high school. Before that, probably see each other almost every day during the summer, but as soon as we were in high school, I probably spent over 200 days a year, either on the water or traveling or doing other things with these people, and those are bonds that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. And so I think, you know, just taking the opportunity to outside of sailing also, you know, enjoy the time with these people, because you will see them not only for the rest of the summer or the rest of the event, but for the rest of your life. And that's one of the other founding motivations of this event. In memory of Liam, he was also part of that group, and you just got to cherish the time that you have with those people.
Hi, I'm Libby Redmond. I'm not siblings with anyone up here, but my sister and brother are actually over here competing in other events this weekend. I graduated Boston College in 2024, and I'm living in Boston now, working as an auditor. So super exciting stuff, I know. No, I'm kind of here talking about like my experience with racing with all these guys since high school and now at the Hinman and everything. But also just balancing, still doing what you love while being in the working world, and kind of just echoing what Mitchell and Lachlain said. It is so special to be able to like go to these regattas and see people I've grown up with and see people in all the phases of our lives. And it's truly like nothing else you will ever do. So don't take each other for granted, and yeah, just happy to be here and answer any questions. I've sailed a lot of different boats over the years, started team racing in Opties, went off to do it in high school sailing, CJ Buckley, Hinman, skippered and crewed in college team racing for women's and co-ed. And then now up in Boston, I've gotten involved in sonar team racing, which is like 4 or 5 people per boat, 3v3 or 2v2 style team racing. So definitely different and really cool to kind of enter a new learning curve for the first time in a while. So yeah, happy to answer any questions and talk with you all.
And is running an international junior sailing class, right? And so I was the president of my class in high school and a captain of my sailing team at college, and through leadership found myself creating and developing opportunities for, standing on the shoulders of giants, making sure that I create the opportunities for the ones coming up to do the things that maybe I didn't have an opportunity to do. There was no junior team racing championship when I was sailing as a junior. And so we made it, we built it. And now it's unfortunately in honor of a friend of mine that passed, but now we get 30 teams, and I think everybody up here has sailed that event, which is unreal. And so if you have, this isn't about me, it's about them, but in the idea that if you are a student leader and you are, on your student government and you're involved in that, this is a pathway too. And there is a way to be part of the environment and administration of sailing. And as I joke about, there are people that don't play the game that run sailing events, and I think we know how those events go. And there are people that do play the game that run sailing events, and we know how those events go, right? So being part of that change that you want to see in the sport, as these individuals all have, if you're interested in it, and parents, this may be more for the parents. I'm happy to talk to the parents as well about leadership and organization and structure for not just junior sailing writ large. So, I lost my notebook.
I think Justin and I, fortunately enough, had the opportunity to go to Europe every summer and sail the I-420s over there, but we really just wanted to stay local and sail the Club 420 because we had so many friends in the class. And I think one main thing that taught me specifically was how to be an ultimate competitor on the water, and to try your absolute hardest. And then also when you get back to land, kind of be the best of friends with your competitors. And that's kind of what I was with Liam and Lachlain and Justin and Libby and Declan and all these people here. I mean, I think the best memories I have at regattas is going to like CBS with Liam and spending $200 and spending 4 hours in there doing absolutely nothing in like the middle of a national championship. And I think that's what's so great about the Club 420 class. It's not hours and hours of boat work on end, and everyone's laughing at me, but I mean, I'm for real. It's the truth. So I think that's what the Club 420 class taught me a lot, and that's just why I enjoy it so much.
I mean, I'll keep mine really short and sailing related. I think spinnaker trim, and learned that in the Club 420 class, was hammered into me and by my Mitchell and Libby here. I think it's the ability to be a good teammate. I think you go through the Club 420 class and you have a lot of different teammates. I mean, I coach in the Club 420 class all the time, and sometimes we have 30 boats on our team, but like we've kind of been saying up here, you're going to see a lot of these people for the rest of your life.
So keep introducing yourself to people, keep making friends, because you never know when you're gonna be on a team race team with them in the Hitman, or you're gonna be on a professional team with them, or you're gonna get the same job, or you're gonna go to school together. I mean, Mitchell, Lachlain, and me went to school together. Libby and Declan went to school together. You know, we sail against these guys in college. So it's really a lifelong sport that you really want to be a good teammate in, because people are always watching you. And they want to be around someone that's having fun. And if you're having fun on the water and you're having fun on land, people are really going to like that, and they're going to give it right back to you. Public speaking and like communication. So I think that's a skill we're going to need to do our whole life. So maybe some of the stuff that I learned in that class is coming out right now. I don't know. But public speaking is always good to do as well. You're always going to need to know how to communicate with people, especially when you're on a team, or you're in the protest room, or you want to get a job, or you want to be on a certain team. Being able to effectively communicate is super, super important.
Self-discovery in literature, which was pretty much a fancy title for reading a bunch of self-help books. And honestly, what it really helped us evaluate was just like what is important to us as like people, as students, as athletes, as anything, and just pursuing really what you're passionate about in life. And so that was a big takeaway for me.
What we'll do here is this will be the last question, and then if sailors or parents have questions, I'd like to go ahead and hand the mic around and see if we can crowdsource some of those. So I think the last question that I'd like to ask is, what is one thing you've gotten from your sailing community that you didn't expect from it? So whether that's your job, whether that's an opportunity in the sport that you didn't expect, what is something, and while you are all thinking of it, since I'm the old guy up here, I'll tell you that I met my wife running the Larchmont Junior Yacht Club sailing program. And so my two children, here I am sitting talking about sailing, right? That's what I got from sailing. And so I beat all of you. But what is something that the sport has given you that you didn't necessarily expect or find out of it?
I think the interesting thing is, like, you know, like we grew up all sailing together, so I've always thought of sailing as like these people and the people that I like sail with every day. But I was in the office in New York, and I was just like randomly talking to someone on the legal team, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going down to Larchmont to go sailing." And I was like, "You're a sailor?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm a sailor. You know, like come by, like I got a boat, come sailing whenever you want." And so it's just the random people that you meet in the office in New York that give you these opportunities to do sailing that you didn't know you had. And so now, I have a couple people from my company that are sailors in Salem, New York, and a place that's notoriously hard to go sailing. I have the opportunity to go sailing now. So I think like that's something that, is not necessarily the community that you build today, but it's the fact that you are a sailor and it's a unique sport and you can build that community for the future.
Deep cuts, all right. Well, that concludes that. I mean, I hit you with the family one, so I suppose. All right, so parents, sailors, what questions do we have? Raise your hand, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to Mitchell's point earlier when he was just saying say yes to everything. I mean, Mitchell and I, when we were 11 years old, they needed like an 80-pound kid on naturals for the naturals worlds, and we did the naturals worlds at 11 years old. Or there's just being around sailing, there's going to be people that give you opportunities if you're young and you're eager and you're asking questions, and people want to give opportunities to people who want to learn and who want to kind of be present, I guess, at everything. And I think another thing is, don't be afraid to just ask questions to these people that seem really daunting. I mean, I called some people out of the blue and said, "Hi, I'm Justin Callahan. I would, here's some of my results. I would really like to be able to work with you guys," or really just getting my foot in the door at any point possible. So I first started off by handing out t-shirts for them, and then I slowly kind of worked my way up, and then I was able to end up sailing on the F50 in Bermuda. I think this question would also be really good for Ben. I think Ben, Ben's done a Youth America's Cup and he's worked with the America's Cup team as well. But I think a lot of it is just asking the right questions, asking questions to people that may seem a little bit daunting, or, it's okay to be uncomfortable and just keep putting yourself out there and keep being really, really eager. You don't necessarily have to be, in my case, I'm not a foiler at heart. I've done a lot of different dinghies. I've sailed snipes, I've sailed 420s, I've sailed now 470s. I've done a lot of keelboat stuff, and I've done some foiling as well, but being eager and asking questions. But I'm also going to pass this question to Ben as well. How did you get into Youth America's Cup?
Yeah, I think something that, ask the question, why are we doing something? So for sail shape and all this stuff, it all transfers over to every boat. So I think that's what's, also cool about the dinghy. If we think about any boat, we think about, we want to twist the sail, we want to, trim this harder, we want to bend the mast more. We ask the question why, then it transfers to everything. So I think a lot of that, from all the boats I sail, and I'm coaching snipes now. I've never sailed a snipe before, but the concepts are the same. And it's the same, we're talking in the cup way of why we're doing rig bend, it's the same in the snipe. So I think that, using dinghy sailing to, there might be tips and tricks for Club 420 or 29 or something like that, but if we use, we ask the question why and, figure out those answers, I think that's always super transferable, to something like Sail GP or the America's Cup. For me, I did a lot of moss sailing. I started in the Wasp, and, that is obviously super transferable more to like a foiling path, but it doesn't always have to be because, there's sometimes less people sailing at it. It's obviously harder to get into, it costs more. So I think just, in overall sailing and dinghy sailing, if you know what you're doing, ask the question why and how you can transfer that over to something else. Why are we making this change? What do we want? And every boat sails are similar. Talking about, America's Cup main sail, it's not that different than, a Club 420 sail. It's different, and you might have all these different controls, but the end, there's twist, there's camber, there's draft. It's all the same concepts. And just being able to, figure that out in any different type of boat. I was very fortunate to sail lots of different types of boats, but all the concepts are the same. And, you go to Club 420, you go to an I-420, you add some more controls, and just keep asking the question, why? And why am I doing it? And, and how can you do it? I think that's super important. And, eventually, if you know all that stuff and you can transfer to other boats, opportunities will come. I think opportunities are starting to get more. What America One's doing is awesome. Switch sailing, Wasp sailing, there's so many opportunities coming that's really exciting, and just always being eager, taking opportunities, and being able to go into a different boat and, have the knowledge from other boats. So, not being boat specific is also, super important. Being able to sail all different types of boats and, know why you're doing something and be able to ask the right questions. But in the end, all sailing is very similar, no matter what type of boat you're sailing. It's all very similar, and, it's all super transferable, but it's not boat specific. It should be more, a general sailing specific trend.
For me, Liam and I had a conversation. We were in the same grade in college, our sophomore spring, and we kind of looked at each other. We were at some college regatta, and we looked at each other and said, like, what do we really want to do with our lives? And we both didn't really have an answer for that. And we got talking, we said, what are we really passionate about? And we both said, well, obviously we're really passionate about sailing, and we love the sport, and we obviously want to continue it as much as we can. And obviously everyone up here, whether they're in an office or going out every day on the water sailing, is continuing in our sport. There's so many ways to do that, but we kind of made the agreement together that we would, kind of do some sort of professional sailing, whether we wanted to be in the America's Cup together or Sail GP or an Olympic campaign. And we really wanted to push each other, and I think to kind of get to that goal, and that's what we did starting at 8 years old. I think Liam was involved in my first protest and also our last protest. But we had a great time, and we really pushed each other all throughout our childhood. And so I feel like what I'm doing now is very much in honor of Liam, and taking sailing professionally as much as I can, because that's what we both wanted to do together. And so that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, I think you'll hear a lot here about sort of how much fun Liam had, and I think that is an aspect that I'll always take with me. But the other side of him was he was a fierce competitor. like on the water, off the water, he was a fierce competitor, and he wanted to win just as badly as the person next to you. And you'd see him on the dock after team racing, and they lost a race, and they would be like analyzing like, what did we do wrong, like asking the questions that you heard these guys talk about, and that like fierce competitiveness where you're always trying to be better, you're always trying to find that 1%. Like I take that with me in my sailing, I take that with me in my work, and it's it's a fierce competitiveness, with the ability to sort of have fun, but that fierce competitiveness, I think I'll always take with me.
Hey Declan, I would just also add for all the high school kids, Liam was a super fierce competitor, but one of the things that made me so proud of him was like when he would go in, and whether it's walking out of a protest room, whether he won or lost, or walking out of a match racing. All right, hello. So I just wanted to also say, he was a super fierce competitor, but for the high school kids in here, also remember he was passionate, right? And he wanted to win, and it was important to him. But he would walk out of a protest, or he would walk out of a match race, and whether he won or lost, I remember seeing him, come up and put his arm around, whoever he was fighting against, or sailing against, and whether it was Justin Mitchell or some of the guys in the match racing. I remember when he won the national championship in match racing. In the first couple of days, it was tough. And I remember seeing him walk off the dock, and I'm walking behind him with Allison, and he has his arm around the guy that, one spot in front of him, keeping him from the national championship. He ended up winning, so it worked out. But I was like so proud that, it reminded of those cartoons where they come in and they're like fighting all day and killing each other and working super hard, but not to the point that you're a jerk, or that you're not true to yourself or true to your friends. And so at the end of the day, if you can compete with these people, and you can have, the high moral ground, and you can always do what you think is right, and then at the end of the day, you still have to, you live with these people, and you need to be, you need to appreciate them, respect them, whether they're on your team or as an opponent. And so I do think that, you have to have that balance of really competitiveness, but at the same time also, realize that your competitors aren't your enemies. They can be your friends, but they can still be your competitors. So I would just,
Mr. O'Keefe just said, I considered myself, Justin, and Liam basically triplets. I think we had so much fun together, and I could laugh for 10 minutes straight about all the memories that pop into my head at regattas and practices and etc. But I think Liam specifically had this magical switch. We'd be screaming our heads off at each other in a team race, whatever it was. We'd get in the water, and he'd come up and give me a hug and say, "Mitch, what are we doing now? Like, what's the plan?" And I just think about that a lot. And I mean, I'd be like, this guy's nuts. Like, how can you flip the switch that quickly? And I think that's a really important lesson to have in sailing, where sailing is a lifelong sport, and these are all lifelong friends sitting here, both for you and for me. And I think that's one of the main things I learned from Liam, is that at the end of the day, it's just a sailboat race, and he just enjoyed being on the water, whether he was racing or foiling or going to Stiltsville out here, whatever it was. So I look back super fondly on those times.
Yeah, I think memory is actually outside of sailing, that I went to high school with Liam, and often what we do, either days after school or any day that we weren't sailing on the weekend, is we would take out his rib and we would go wakeboarding in the Marine Stadium. And Liam was always trying to do the craziest tricks. He was trying to do a backflip on a tiny rib wake, and just absolutely just taking falls. And we take a break one time and anchor up next to one of the sunken boats out there, and he's like, "Why don't we just climb up the mast and jump off of it?" And the half of me was like, that doesn't sound like too good of an idea, to be honest. But we ended up doing it, and it was super fun, and we all stayed safe. And I think one of the things that Liam didn't have a comfort zone. He was willing to do everything and anything that he found exciting, and I certainly carry that with me every day. making sure that you don't just get too complacent and do what you think will be safe and easy, but trying hard things and sometimes things that you might not be comfortable doing, because I think the lessons and the fun you can have doing those things, both in a recreational and a professional sense, are things that can stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things I could say. I think I would say my biggest takeaway, well, there are two things, kind of short, but Liam and I have gotten into many, sassy talkbacks to each other and like arguments, because we sailed together for a year and a half. It's a long time. You're bound to fight like siblings. But I think one of my favorite things that I still do to this day is before and after every race, no matter how it went, we'd always fist bump. And it's like reset, no matter what, good or bad, like you have the same routine, and I take that with me to this day.